Good afternoon, and thanks for clicking on to the Tuesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. Before we continue with the video, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. This is obviously the past 45 days, so essentially the summer so far, and we are running firmly below average at the moment across the west and firmly warmer than average across the east of the continent. Looking at July specifically, obviously I've been showing this quite a lot in recent times, but we still running firmly below average. But it's quite interesting, actually. Looks as if we are going to see a surge of summer as we progress through the second half of this working week, especially the further south and east you go over the UK, and very similar to what we've seen in the month of June. So remember back in June, right up until about the 20th, 22nd of June, we were running firmly below average, and then we've seen that final week to 10 days firmly above average, and that essentially knocked back that significant cool anomaly for the majority of June. So it looks as if this week we're in that warming trend as expected, and there is a chance of seeing 30 Celsius, believe it or not, in the southeast of the UK during the course of this week. So it feels like over recent years it's this kind of short, sharp burst of heat that we're seeing in a generally low pressure and unsettled overall pattern. And what I'm kind of looking at here is the jet stream, the sea surface temperature anomalies, both in the Pacific as well as the Atlantic, and how the atmosphere is responding to that. Up until now, we've generally had low pressure dominating the northwest and firmly higher pressure dominating the southeast of the continent here. Now, I alluded quite a lot with regards to the drought conditions across the southeast of the continent and how I felt higher pressure was going to go to where that dry ground was, and also lower pressure going to where we've seen a lot of rain over the past winter and spring season, and also the response to the SSTs over the North Atlantic as well. And it's generally been the same pattern through the first 45 days of the month. If you actually look back at the upper air pattern over the last 45 days, it's generally been a deep low to the northwest of the continent and a strong high to the southeast. The question would be, what changes this? We need to have something to essentially kick the atmosphere, whether it be the developing La Nina, which has been slow going over the eastern Pacific, or the Mann-Julian oscillation, or in fact the tropics within the Atlantic, to give the atmosphere a kick and shift what we've seen so far. And the month of August, a few folk have said, are we going to see heat in the month of August? It's very difficult to say. And the reason why is because we expect to see the Atlantic becoming more active. At the moment, it's rather quiet, but that is likely to change. We've reached a 2-year high in terms of Saharan dust concentration over the Atlantic. We've got widespread sinking because the MJO is primarily active over the Western Pacific, through the maritime continent and into the Indian Ocean. At the moment here, we've got an active MJO in this region. It's driving a fairly robust monsoon over the Indian subcontinent. We've also got it over Southeast Asia as well, where we're seeing frequent downpours associated with that pulse of MJO activity. But we're seeing the widespread shutdown over the Atlantic, and that was anticipated here in the channel. Actually, initially towards the end of the month of June, that didn't happen. It was slow, but eventually it did come. Now, as we progress towards the end of this month, into the month of August, the equation, I think, will change. We'll start to see a more active hurricane season in the Atlantic Basin, and where these systems go will determine the type of strength of jet stream, whether it's zonal or whether it's wavy or not, and that will then change the upper air setup. Now, at this moment in time, and through the course of the last 45 days, we've had generally zonal jet stream. Ridging over the central North Atlantic, we've had a fairly strong jet. We've had a trough over the over southern Greenland. We've had a ridge over the North Atlantic, and we've had a very strong jet running across the top of that demarcation zone between high and low, cold and warm. And then we've seen this dip in the jet to the northwest of Europe and essentially driving our cool past 45 days or so. Now, what I think will happen is we're going to start to see the Atlantic liven up. We're going to see the MJO shift from the Indian Ocean, possibly towards the Atlantic Basin as we move into the month of August. And therefore, the jet is going to change shape due to that change within the tropics. So, a couple of interesting little things going on at the moment here I want to talk about, and then we'll talk about this week in general. But I thought it was quite interesting to show you. So this is obviously the CFSV2 forecast for the La Nina. We do expect, this was alluded to back over the weekend, about the possibility that we're going to start to see these cold waters from subsurface waters rise to the surface. We're going to start to cool that Nino region 3.4, and that will eventually give the atmosphere a little bit of a kick, a little bit of a change as well. But incidentally, this is quite an interesting look here. This is off the ECMWF extended here, the ensemble, and this is the mean sea level pressure anomaly between now, well, it's actually Monday the 15th, which was yesterday, right the way through to mid-August, Wednesday the 14th of August. And you notice a couple of little changes now starting to take shape. Yes, we had the negative over southern Greenland. We had a strong ridge over the central North Atlantic. We've had generally that flow coming around the top of that, down into the UK, and generally we have been to the north of the jet, so we've been on the cool side of the jet. Notice here that the model here, this is one model run of many, get that, but it's starting to show subtle changes. You notice here that we're actually starting to see that dip in the jet over the North Atlantic. We've not got the strong ridge of high pressure anymore. It's weaker. The Bermuda High appears to be further west here. We've got lower pressure over the eastern side of the Atlantic. But notice here that we have above average heights over the next 30 days. So this is obviously a 30-day mean sea level pressure anomaly here. And notice here that the UK and Ireland is actually under above average heights, which is slightly different to what we've seen in recent times. Let's have a look at the upper air situation here for the next 30 days. And you can see here that we've got more of a robust trough over Greenland and more in the way of ridging here over the UK and Ireland here. So this is going to be an interesting period coming up here. I'm not necessarily buying into necessarily a hot, dry August by any stretch at this moment in time. I do think we're still going to see fluctuations, but I think the atmosphere is going to start to give that kick that we need to see this rut end, where we've had low pressure, low heights, cool temperatures. Obviously, we had a dry June, but we've had quite a wet July so far. And we're also seeing, obviously, the change from west to northwest to more west to southwest winds, which is allowing some of that building heat over the continent to then start to get ever closer to the UK and Ireland. Essentially, the door's been shut up until now, with the exceptions of a week during the second half of June. Do we see a more significant change coming overall? This is, like I say, this is something that you need to take with somewhat of a pinch of salt. Let's have a look and see what the 30 days is looking like in terms of the temperature anomaly. And let's look at Europe specifically. A lot is going to hinge on what goes on within the tropics. But you notice here, again, it's not necessarily buying into anything significantly warm for the upcoming 30-day period. But what it is doing is we're losing, according to this model, the average to below average anomaly. It's actually looking more like average to slightly above average, which would be helpful. But given what we've seen over the last 45 days, we could still end up being a colder than average summer for the first time since 2015, by the way. We'll wait and see what happens. Let's go on to the 46th day of the model, and this is what it's showing. So this is all the way out to the end of August in terms of the temperature anomaly. Let's get to the here now. Current temperatures are looking like this. We've actually reached the first 20 Celsius of July here at Vogan Weather HQ this afternoon. We likely will touch that possibly tomorrow, and then we'll see a frontal system moving through, and that will bring an end to the 20s. So we're only likely to see, if anything, a 2-day stretch of 20 Celsius or higher here at the house. Elsewhere, we are going to see low 20s. We've done that this afternoon. We've seen a 24 at Strathallan and Perthshire yesterday. That was, I think, maybe the warmest place in the UK. I could be wrong with that. But you notice here that even now, we're still only in the low 20s, but we're going to jack the temperature up quite significantly over the next couple of days here. We're going to see a sudden rise. We're going to see the first 25 Celsius of July so far for the UK, and we may actually see, incidentally, by Friday afternoon, the first 30 of the year. But it comes and it goes again, and we'll look at that in just a second here. This is the latest radar image here of weather online, and you can see that we have got plenty of beefy showers. We've got an area of low pressure just to the east of the coast here, and that's sending moisture in, creating that instability. And obviously with strong incoming solar radiation at this time of the year, we're generating some very, very lively showers and thunderstorms. Downpours, localized flooding is likely down that eastern side of Scotland, down the spine of England here. We've got a frontal boundary here. It looks like a convective line here running off the Pennines and towards the east coast here. So certainly this is going to be a notable event this afternoon in terms of these downpours, I think. Just pressed the wrong button. Sorry about that. So yeah, we'll watch what happens over the next couple of days here in terms of that. Looking at the situation with regards to the overall situation, why are we seeing this warming taking place? Well, we're actually building pressure over the continent here. We've got a reasonably strong jet exit in eastern North America. You can see that here. This is at 6Z tomorrow, and you can see here a jet moving out of North America and out over the Atlantic. But if you build pressure over the western side of the continent here, as all this air continues to drive away from North America across the Atlantic, and it comes up against resistance of the high over Europe, you then start to shift the trough westwards here as the high over the continent shifts west. And that's what I showed you back, I think, on Friday of last week, about how the ridge builds over Europe and pushes the trough to the west. That then reshapes the upper air steering flow here. Instead of it being west-northwest, we then have a more southerly flow, and therefore that is the reason why we're seeing the build-up of warmth. So you can see here, it's actually feeling, so as the jet here exits North America, it's already feeling the presence of that high over Europe. So therefore, it's actually forcing a piece, this branch here of the jet, to lift north. As it does so, it then takes a dip, and it's taking a dip to the west of the UK and Ireland here. And that's crucial. That is different to what we've seen in recent times. As that reshaping of the upper air flow takes place, then we start to see heights coming up, and therefore we start to see warmer air getting driven in. So you skip back here to the end of this working week, and you see the position. So we've got an area of low pressure to the west. We've got this stronger jet stream core exit North America. It feels the presence of the ridge. It then forces the piling up of air to the west. Hence, we're seeing lower pressure, and therefore we're starting to see that heat out of the continent lifting up into the UK. Another way of looking at this is like this. So we'll look at the 850 temperatures here of the model, and you see what takes place. So this is the overview of the ECMWF. You can see there's that area of low pressure just to the east, triggering those showers and thunderstorms over the eastern side of the country here. Keeping in mind the jet coming off North America, also keeping in mind the heights rising over the continent, and therefore we're starting to see lower pressure gather to the west. That then opens the door to southerly winds, and we see the warmer air moving northwards here. If you look at the 850s, this is a good way of looking at it in terms of that changing of the upper air setup and the introduction to something a little bit warmer here. So therefore, as we move towards the end of this week, you can see here that we've got the 15 Celsius isotherm at the 5,000 feet over the north of France here, and we've pushed the 10 Celsius line all the way up into southern Scotland here. With sunshine, the temperatures at the surface will respond. Does it last? Not necessarily, because what we are going to see is low pressure returning. It's going to push the heat south and southeast once again, and we're back to square one almost. So you can see here that as we continue to play through the loop, it's showing generally that door shut back again. So it's a short, sharp burst of summer warmth, just like we've seen in June. But like I said, as we move towards the end of July into August, I think it's going to hinge on the shift of the MJO and also the ramping up of the Atlantic hurricane season. I think that is what's going to change the overall equation as we go into the month of August here. So looking at the jet here, actually, if we look back at this chart here and play it through, you notice what takes place. It actually becomes quite flatlined once again, and this is almost going back to the default setting we've had so far. Area of high pressure stretched out from North America to Western Europe, Northwest Africa. We've got lower pressure to the north, flat jet, and essentially we're just seeing that continuation of Atlantic-driven weather into the UK and Ireland. So we'll continue to play through. Look at how flat it is. Look at how stretched, zonal, high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north, and westerly winds driving in across the UK and Ireland. Hence why we're not necessarily going to see anything particularly warm during the second half of this month, I'm afraid here. It's really now, I think, more August that we have the potential. This is a short burst of summer warmth, and it's very, very similar to the month of June. And like I said, it takes something fundamentally different within the source region, i.e. the tropics, to change, to therefore change this cycle that we're in, this kind of repeat cycle. Looking at the UK temperatures here, it looks like obviously upper teens to low 20s across the board. This is a continent. You can see here plenty of warmth. We've got slightly fresher moving into France, Low Countries and Western Germany. Again, very hot conditions. Close to average, slightly above average across central and southern Iberia, if you notice here, but it's really down across Italy, the Balkans, Greece, Turkey, up the eastern side of Europe here, where we've got the temperatures approaching 40, anywhere from Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova, up into the Ukraine, into the Baltic states as well. We're seeing temperatures in the 30s as well. So we just continue to repeat this cycle. So looking at other aspects here, I want to show you the temperatures. Now, for the northern UK, low 20s is going to be our limit. But down across the south here, and I want to show you, let's go back actually to the overview chart here because I want to show you this. Let's have a look at the northwest of Europe specifically and show you. So there's that area of low pressure bringing all the unsettled conditions at the moment here. But notice what happens. We're starting to see the heights rising over the near continent. There's that area of low pressure kind of winding up, and then it's southerly winds. So we're introducing that warmer air from the near continent, but it's going to send a front. This area of low pressure is going to send a front across Scotland. We're going to drop the temperature. But as this frontal system moves east and southeast, we're going to continue to rise the temperature across central and southern England here. And therefore, the model is seeing some decent warmth, both by day and by night. But if you're not a lover of heat, the good news is that this doesn't last forever. It isn't a long-lived thing. But look at this here. So Wednesday afternoon, low 20s. Then as we move through the overnight period, we cool back down to the mid to upper teens, so a fairly muggy, sultry night. Then into Thursday, we'll see the temperatures jacking up further. We're going to likely see 27 Celsius somewhere in the southeast. So this is off the GFS model, by the way, and sometimes it downplays the numbers by a few degrees. But in and around the London area, southeast England, mid to high 20s is likely, possibly even stretching up into Cambridgeshire and the western side of East Anglia as well. Even further north, we're going to see possibly mid-20s up towards the Humber Estuary, for example. Then as we progress through the overnight, look at these temperatures into the low 20s still at midnight UTC. Into 3 o'clock in the morning, we do cool slightly back down, but 18, 19 in the centre of London during the overnight period. Then as we move into Friday, we'll see the temperatures jacking up further. 27 is seen by the model here. Would not be surprised if we see 30, 31 Celsius on Friday afternoon. Then as we move into Saturday, you'll notice here that we have a significant drop in temperature by the time we reach the weekend here, because lower pressure from the north is then sweeping fresher Atlantic air across the board here. So we're back down once again, and it looks as if it's going to maintain that going forward. So you can see here the flat jet look as we move through the final 10 days or so of July here. So unfortunately, this July is looking highly likely to follow in June's footsteps in terms of below average. Let's finally look at Europe and look at the CFSV2. And you can see here that it's showing this. So this is the upcoming week 1, and you can see we've got a fairly strong ridge of high pressure over the eastern continent, southwestern Europe as well. There's the trough extending its way across the majority of the UK and Ireland here. Into week 2, according to the CFSV2, it actually shows higher pressure building in from the south here, which is quite interesting. Let's have a look at the temperature anomalies here real quick and see what it's showing here. So it's actually showing just slightly above average. Despite having higher pressure coming in from the south, it's not overly enthusiastic about bringing in significant warmth. Warmer than average across the bulk of England and Wales, parts of Ireland, but average conditions to slightly below average further north. Week 1 looks like this here, so it's still showing below average, which is quite interesting actually. I'm slightly surprised at that. I think it's a little bit overdone, that below average anomaly. Looking finally at rainfall here, you can see the 7 days. This is the upcoming 7 days, so we're slightly above average in terms of rainfall. Week 2, with higher pressure building in, it's drier than average, and that essentially takes us out to the end of the month here. So I think I've spoken long enough. Like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I hope you enjoyed today's content. I'll be back with plenty more coming up tomorrow, and before the end of this week is out, we'll look at the long range stuff with regards to the first look at some of the models regarding winter. So something to look forward to if you love winter. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. See you tomorrow with more. Bye for now.